Hey everybody, and welcome back to the History Reader. In today's video we are talking about the War in the West, part 4. So this is the final installment for our read along of this book, which we're doing for Non-Fiction November alongside David Murphy. So we've done 3 of these already. If you are interested and you want to go and check them out, you can go and check them out. The book is divided into 4 parts. So we've done one part a week, and this is our final installment. So, where are we at the war at the opening of this part? And just so we're clear, the final part is called the Widening War. So where are we at? So part 1, we kind of deal with the lead up to the war. We have the invasion of Poland, and then we've got this kind of dead period, what gets called the phony war, where everyone is kind of on edge about what is going to happen. Then part 2, we actually get what is more traditionally understood as the war with the invasion of France and the invasion of Norway. France obviously gets beaten, and Norway gets won by the Germans, and so Germany is now the master of Europe, for lack of a better term, and the next kind of obvious step is Britain. Part 3 deals with this impending invasion of Britain. It opens with this idea that an invasion might be coming, and the way that's going to happen is by destroying the RAF, which Hitler fails to do. And so by the end of part 3, Britain has kind of repulsed this invasion. They have started to gain some control in the Atlantic, and we're back at this point now where it wasn't a quick war. We are now in this for like a good amount of time. This war isn't going to be resolved very quickly, and everybody is now aware of that. So what's Germany's situation? Well, from the beginning of the book and the beginning of the war, they have needed resources. And so that is always their focus, is how can they ensure that they've got enough resources to fight this war? Because at this point, at least for some period now, they're going to have to fight effectively a defensive war, make sure that they don't lose the ground that they've made, and get ready to fight the next step, whether that is what we know happens, the invasion of the Soviet Union, or if that's the another attempt at Britain, or whatever. They need to sort of have the resources to do that. And so they turn south, and they look in several places. They look firstly in Africa. The obvious sort of option is to get to Suez and take control of the Suez Canal, which means that they can get access into the world's oceans, assuming that they can control the Mediterranean as well. They can then get access into the world's oceans and get resources from there. It's not super clearly defined how that would have worked, given that the Royal Navy was still a thing, but that's kind of their plan. And so they do go and invade there. They use the Italians at first, which goes sort of okay, but not really. The British do manage to sort of repel that, and you get this very kind of different type of war, this big war of movement in the desert, which I'm not actually that well versed in. I do want to read some more on that, but that's one of the things we've got. The other part is that they need oil, and there's oil in Romania, so that is a focus. They want to sort of focus down there, and then Italy also kind of wants to be part of the war, and so they decide to invade Greece, which is a bit of a disaster, and Germany has to go and help there. Then there's also this sort of control of the Mediterranean, this idea that in order to support the war in Africa, you need control in the Mediterranean, Malta and Crete, and so there are some actions fought there. What does this mean for the wider war? Well, we know that Hitler, at least from some earlier stage in the war, is focused on, or thinks that the focus is going to be on the Soviet Union. He has this idea of Lebensraum, taking living space in the east, and he's going to invade the Soviet Union and fight the war with them. But he's got all these competing priorities, and Holland kind of does this really well. He lays out really well that every tank you send to Africa or to Greece or wherever you're going to send them, every tank, every plane, every soldier, every piece of artillery, everything, every truck is one that doesn't go to the Soviet Union. And we're sort of seeing in this part this creeping calendar, and things are dragging out just a little bit longer than were originally planned and what Hitler would like. And they're dragging out and they're dragging out and they're dragging out, and Hitler kind of doesn't have full control at this point. Things are moving and he can't stop them and control them as he has been able to in the past. I mean, even in the past, we've seen that he doesn't actually have that much, he doesn't have the expertise, he doesn't have that much control over this war machine. Once the war started, it's rolling and you can't just shape it how you want to. I mean, that is true for any war and any leader. And so there's these resources being pulled different ways. Rommel sort of disobeys orders and fights these bigger engagements in Africa, and he's supposed to make up some ground, but it's dragging resources away from the invasion of the Soviet Union. And that really is, at the end of the day, they're fighting these actions to get those resources, and they're actually losing more than they're gaining. So that is Germany's situation during this part. What's Britain's situation? And they have repulsed this impending attack. There's still some bombing happening in Britain, which we deal with a little bit, but they're rebuilding Britain really fast. The morale hasn't broken. That's the biggest thing. Is that Hitler even understood that to beat Britain, you needed to break the morale of the British people, and they didn't do that. Didn't manage to do it. Would they have managed to do it? Like, we don't know. We never got to that point. There were some missteps for sure in terms of bombing targets and whatnot, but they never managed to break the morale of the British people. And the British are getting the Americans on side. We know that Roosevelt kind of has his allegiances to Britain. He was never going to side with Germany in this thing. And he gets past his election, he gets elected for a third time, and then he starts to put things into place. So he starts sort of using the powers of his administration to fund this war effort. And the famous part of this legislation is Lend-Lease, where they basically lend the war material to the British. They build it, give it, and then the idea is that it gets returned at the end, but actually they just pay for it. And I mean, Lend-Lease payments finished in like 2005 or something like that. I don't know the exact date, but it was fairly recently. And so it's this idea that they're giving it on a cash and carry basis, and they're funding this war. They've got this massive industrial machine, and in here we're looking at things about how that industrial machine gets kicked into gear. Because they're producing civilian stuff, and you have to retool the factories and all this stuff. And so the way that the legislation gets written you have this risk taken away from these companies that are doing it. There's all this sort of politics in there, which is not it's not untypical for the US to just make everything political. But there's some politics in there about how this was done. But at the end of the day, it means that Germany is slowly bleeding resources, and they've got this big engagement with the Soviet Union coming, while Britain is actually getting stronger. They're rebuilding Britain. Like there's some stats in here about how quickly they rebuilt the houses in Coventry and whatnot. And they are not losing. They're gearing up to figure out how to beat Germany, while Germany is gearing up to fight the Soviet Union, which has this massive army. Of course, there's training and the mechanization issues in the Soviet Union, but that's really where we're at. They figure out how to plug the holes in the Atlantic, so they're actually able to move much more after mid-1941. They're able to move much more of the material across. They managed to break the Enigma codes much more frequently. And so the war is definitely swinging towards the British at this point. They are in this sort of war of attrition that we don't really think about the Second World War being a war of attrition, but it drags on a long time and a lot needs to go into it. At the end of this book, we are building, like, Britain is in a much stronger position at the end of the part, certainly, than they were at the beginning of, say, part 2, when they were up against the ropes. Germany was triumphant in Europe, and they were getting ready to sort of fight off this invasion. Now they have fought off that invasion, and they're getting stronger, while Germany is consistently getting weaker. And that's where we leave it. The next book is titled, at least the copy here we can get in Australia is titled something like The Allies Strike Back. So we can see we've built up, okay, the Allies have this power now, and so now they're going to strike back in volume 2. So that's been The War in the West by James Holland. It's volume 1, by the way, Germany Ascendant 1939 to 1941. I hope you enjoyed the read along. If you did join, if you didn't join while we were doing it, the videos are all up on the channel, so you can go and read part by part and hear my thoughts on it, if that's something that's interesting to you. And I'll be back soon. I'm reading some other stuff, very different stuff now, so I'll be back soon with another video. And hope you're having a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye.